The Longevity Lounge is proudly brought to you by AIA Australia, dedicated to helping Australians live healthier, longer, better lives. On our latest Younger Longer Longevity Lounge podcast, we're joined by longevity expert Dr Nick Engerer, a trailblazer in the mindset of living younger for longer. Known for his no-nonsense approach and deep understanding of what it takes to live a longer, healthier life, Nick shares his cutting-edge insights with Leechy and the Professor. Don't miss this one. Tune in and start redefining what's possible for your health span.
So Nick, welcome to the lounge.
Thank you, Karl. I'm really excited to be with you and Guy today. I've been looking forward to this.
So for those listeners who don't know you and your practice and your motivation, can you talk to us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I actually didn't even come into longevity and wellness through a medical lens at all. I'm a scientist by background. I used to work in meteorology and solar energy, and I built and scaled a tech company. And when I sold that company, I had this moment of wondering, what am I going to do next that's going to make a positive impact in the world? And I had this hobby blog on the side called Longevity Blog, and I was covering some of the great technologies that you guys like to talk about. And I realized that that's where I wanted to go next. That was going to be where I went all in. And that's how I started my new company, A Longer Life, where I'm trying to help people navigate the discussions that you're having here about longevity.
Where was that?
Beginning of 2023 is actually when I made that pivot.
Did you do that? How long have you been in Australia for, and was longevity on your mind when you're overseas?
Look, I came to Australia in 2011. And I wasn't, I was always into health and wellness, but I wasn't on this longevity journey quite yet. It was actually at the birth of my son in 2013, where his mother got diagnosed with a rare form of cancer during the cesarean section. She had appendix cancer, and she had to have a really big surgery, chemotherapy, came back one more time in 2017, another big surgery, chemotherapy. And actually in that same year, I had two friends get diagnosed with cancer. All of them were in their late 20s. And as I made my way through that journey, through that old confrontation with mortality that I hear is a very common theme in many people who get into this space, I started asking the question, why do we live in this world with all this amazing technology, yet we still have, even the rich and famous, getting these stage 4 cancer diagnoses? You got 3 months to live. It didn't make much sense to me. And as I really dove into what was out there, I began to realize that back then in 2017, 2018, even then, we already had much of the technology we need to detect disease at an early and treatable stage. It just simply wasn't well known. There wasn't yet a market for it. And that became a part of my vision for the world, is one where we can catch disease early. And ultimately going deep on that and finding all the amazing technologies there are to do that, like full body MRIs, blood testing. You can blood test for cancer now. I really came to the point where I realized this was about more than just detecting disease early, but in fact that we can live long, healthy lives, much longer than we maybe even thought was possible because of all the technology that's being developed now. And I find that very exciting. And I'm here to help my audience and your audience navigate that exciting future.
It seems that it's funny, because 2016, 17, prior to COVID, no one was talking about this on social media. It wasn't a thing, right? There was obviously people out there that were interested in it, but it seemed like the turning point was when the Hubermans and these guys like Atia were stuck at home and these podcasts started, and all of a sudden they became popular, and then all of a sudden we're all talking about longevity now.
Yeah, I think there was a big pivot there. People became much more conscious about their health and the consequences of when they're not healthy. I mean, everybody who thought about COVID and heard it in the early stages was thinking about their mortality in one way or another, either their own or maybe their parents or people that they care about. And we all started to pay a bit more attention to our health.
So maybe that was a good thing, right?
As well as getting stuck indoors and creating podcasts. You're right about that part.
Yeah, it just made you realize of your mortality, and it probably was just one of those circuit breakers in life that people have.
Nick, I'd like to come in a minute to your framework and the way that you operate and your thinking, but just in terms of general terms, we spend a lot of time looking at the top end of performance. How do we live longer into our 90s, that sort of conversation. When, to your earlier point, we're having people die younger and from largely lifestyle diseases, where do you focus?
Yeah, I think it's really about, in that part, it's about having a bit of a strategy and even understanding what diseases you're most at risk for. And in fact, while we don't think that way, with a bit of effort, we can start to see into the future just by simply completing a family health history questionnaire and looking at what diseases your related aunts and uncles, grandparents, parents, siblings have developed over time, maybe even complementing that with a high-quality genetic test. You can get a view of what you're at most at risk for in the future. Like, for example, I know that I am likely to have issues with my retinal health because my mother developed retinal health issues at a young age, and my genetic risks show up, age-related macular degeneration, as something I'm at high likelihood for. So I get to start thinking about that decades earlier because I've done a little bit of strategizing.
If people at home are exercising in the morning and they're eating well and they're getting enough sleep, they don't drink too often. I mean, do they need to worry about this because they're doing stuff right that means that they're giving themselves the best chance of not getting some of these illnesses?
I think you're making a good point in that we know a lot about what we need to do with our lifestyle choices to stay healthy, right? So we know we need to eat well. We know we need to move more. We need to know that we know we need to manage stress. Yeah, but those are basic components that really need a bit more optimization than just simply doing those things well in order to really get ahead of disease. We need to start pulling in more resources. With that example I just gave you, age-related macular degeneration, for example, you can support your eye health with zeaxanthin, carotenoids. Take that as a supplement. Pay attention to your diet to be getting beta-carotene, those things that support your eye health a bit more intentionally because you know that risk is there for you. Another great one is prostate cancer. Most men will develop prostate cancer, as some of them have it become metastatic because it's detected at a late stage. Like President Joe Biden just found
metastatic now?
Meaning that it spreads beyond the local origin of the original cancer, right? And that's what we would call a late stage 3, stage 4 cancer. And we can all be taking preventative support for that through lycopene. It's got some great research behind it. It doesn't go all the way to saying you won't develop that disease, but it can lessen its severity and increase the health of your prostate, which all men have. And you can take lycopene for cents a day. So there's things that you can be doing beyond just those simple choices once you start to have the right mindset and develop a bit of strategy for yourself.
I'd like to come back to something you said earlier, which is we don't think like this, but we should. And that whole we don't think like this is quite interesting because a lot of us have this sort of innate belief that it won't happen to me. Or even if it does, we're super hopeful that there's a way out for us. Is it your view that we have to overcome that and challenge that and actually face into mortality to take the first step?
Absolutely. No one thinks it's going to be me. Chadwick Boseman, when the actor in Black Panther who died in his late 30s with cancer,
right.
He didn't think it could be me. It would be me.
He was ripped, that guy, wasn't he?
He was. He was healthy.
Yeah.
Yep. And, he could have had a colon cancer test and caught that earlier, but we don't build that into our strategy. And I won't point at him for having done anything wrong.
You wouldn't know, though. You wouldn't know. No one tells you, do they?
No one tells you. You have to take this into your own hands. You have to be proactive. You have to be building that strategy because it's not enough to just think, I won't happen to me, bury your head in the sand and wait for later. I mean, just go back to my example of 3 friends in their late 20s. That's why it was so confronting for me, because it wasn't just a one-off. It was 3 people in their late 20s, all close to me, who all had a very close call.
And you, just for the people that don't have a great understanding of what it is that you actually do, can you talk us through what your offering is, what your business is, how people can get access to you?
Yeah, look, so I come at this from the tech entrepreneur background. So I'm thinking about how do we solve problems? How do we make things easy for people? And when I pulled everything I knew together about longevity and looked at the market, the biggest thing that I saw for people was information overload. All you have to do is slow down your scroll on Instagram, and because you saw a red light therapy panel. And what are you going to see in every single other scroll every other day over on Facebook as well? Probably see it on Google searches. You're going to start getting inundated with red light therapy and related supplements and wellness products. And they're all going to tell you that they're the best thing. They're all going to tell you a very convincing marketing strategy about why their product's the best, why you should purchase it. All the money is going to the highest bidder, not the best product. It's overwhelming. How do you navigate even just that decision? And how do you know which technology you should leverage with your limited budget? So I went right at that problem of this is overwhelming because people get excited about longevity. They hear what you guys are talking about. They hear your guests come on. They get psyched up. They want to get into it. They watch a Longevity Hackers docuseries. They watch things on their favorite YouTube channel about supplements. But again, there's nearly infinite choice. So I built A Longer Life, which is my platform on my website, nickengerer.org. And I made this simple. I put it into a 4-part framework and made it progressive. Said, start here, get the right mindset, develop and cultivate a longevity mindset. Go into that second part, which we've talked a little bit about, and develop your own strategy. What do you need to focus on? Then go into that lifestyle piece and focus on the areas where you're weakest and try to optimize lifestyle there. Most of that's free so far. Everything I've just talked about is free so far. Before you go to the fourth part, which is the fun, exciting, sexy part that everyone wants to get into, which is the longevity technologies, the red light therapy, the supplements, the biological age tests, everything that you get advertised to about. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but you want to go into that with the right mindset and know what you need to focus on. Where do you need help and support? It's going to be different for every person, and so you have to have some agency as you go into that. And that's why I've created that 4-part framework, ultimately to try to make it less overwhelming and give people a place to start while preserving some of that excitement.
So you've got the world against you to some extent. So I saw a statistic that the average fat pig in America is leaner than the average person in America. And so we've got all that, the food industry, a variety of other lifestyle challenges that's pushing people towards poor choices, I suppose. What is the catalyst? What's the tipping point? Why do people see, other than obviously the challenge with mortality, are there other levers that come into play that drive people to you?
I think it's health crisis, unfortunately. I think that's the most common catalyst. I hear that story all the time. I was at a book launch last night for Camilla Thompson, who just released her book, Biohack Me. And it was a health crisis that got her into biohacking. And I spoke with a number of other people at that event, each of them a health crisis as well.
And as you said, you had your 3 mates that in the 20s. So for you, it's like you're looking on board going, oh, shit. And that's going to turn your thinking around as well.
Yeah, well, and all the people that you're mentioning in those statistics, they are all headed for a health crisis. And if they're fortunate, they'll have the opportunity to reinvent themselves when they arrive there. If they're not, if they've got too many pressures against them, that might be the final straw, or they might decide to keep going with their habits. But most often, it's something that confronts people in a way that they realize, look, my health is wealth. If I don't have my health, I don't have anything else. And it takes that moment for most people, unfortunately. So in one way, the world's against us and our message. But in another way, people are ripe for change because they're broken, they're sick, they're unwell. They want something different and more for themselves. And they're looking at how to get out from under that big pile of difficult health problems and not feeling good and want to feel better. So if we can use that as a moment of change, then I think you could see things go a different direction. I mean, you could point to a lot of flaws in what's happening with the Trump administration in the United States right now. But the fact that we have an agenda called Keep America Healthy Again, there's green shoots. There's promise out there. There's a lot to push back against, but people are voting for this and they want it. And there's more and more topics and more shows, just like this one, that people are listening to. And this industry is growing really fast because of that.
Let me tell you, so Karl and I are a little bit different in that we're proactive in our health and longevity. And we both visited a preventative health class in Melbourne and to get genetic testing. And one of the things they said to both of us was, you know that some of the information that you could get back might be disturbing, and you might find that you don't like what you hear. And it did make me think that there's a lot of people out there that just don't want to know. They put their head in the sand. They're like, I don't want to hear this stuff. You and I are different to that, but that must be another obstacle as well.
It absolutely is. I mean, anyone who does a preventative health screening check of any kind has that anxiety. And I think what we need to do is normalize that and say, look, I feel anxious when I get my 3D MRI scan, full body back. Are they going to find anything, or am I going to be healthy? But that is the anxiety, the stress, the nerves that you've got to confront to really take charge of your health. And that's one of the reasons I think a lot of people don't send back their colon cancer screening. They have, I think, 40-something% adherence rate in Australia for free colon cancer screening. It's not that hard to do, but there's a bit of a mental hurdle there. Like, if I do this, what am I going to find out? Am I going to have to go have a colonoscopy? I don't want to do that. But that's how you stay here for your friends and family. And I think that that's the way, one of the ways that we get people to overcome some of those obstacles, to say, look, yeah, it might be a bit nerve-wracking to go get your skin cancer check, but that is one of the top killers of Australians. It's the reason you won't be here for your grandkids. And you got to remember that purpose piece as a motivator.
Yeah. We just had, both Leechy and I had a squamous cell carcinoma removed earlier here, and you've had a BCC removed.
Yeah, first time. Yeah, it's just,
so there's this mindset piece fascinates me, because you've got a few things going on. You've got the shame that you spoke of there, where some people may have let themselves go so much that they don't really want to acknowledge the state of their health, and it's going to come back to them in a factual sense. And then you've got people like our Black Panther example years, or perhaps Guy and I, where we spent our whole lives focused on being fit and healthy, and to the untrained eye, we look like a picture of health to many people, but under the cover, we both, I certainly have, underlying health.
It's never perfect.
Right. So you've got a mindset of assuming, because we live in a sort of a Instagram world, not me necessarily, but more Leechy, where you get this feedback and reinforcement that you're looking great. You post things on your shirt off and things like that. I know people sort of like that. Not me, but you get
all 5 of my followers here.
You get this reinforcement, so you don't feel like there's no impetus to go and say, you know what, what's the state of my liver? Do I have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Which, of course, I do. I use that example. So there's two things going on there. How do you address that mindset? Like, what is the call to action other than just your friends? We lost a very good mate at 36 from cancer, pancreatic cancer, another one at 50. Last week I got news of a 40-year-old friend with a young family, end-stage colorectal cancer. It's prevalent. But what about for the average person who isn't walking into that dark room?
Yeah, this is why I talk so much about mindset, and you've used that word a few times now, right? So this is longevity mindset, I think, the response to this. And that's the first part of the framework I've put together. And I encourage people to adopt a longevity mindset. And I say, to get there, there's two things you've got to realize. The first is that disease is not destiny. You do not actually have to grow old and become weak, dependent, into frailty, and get sick and take multiple pills a day. That's not your destiny. You don't have to do that. And there's a lot of evidence and narrative as to why that's the case. And the second part is that the longer you stick around, the more technology is here to keep you healthy. And that's growing more and more every day. I mean, just look at the development of AI just over the last 3 years. Yeah. This thing's moving faster than ever. And for each of the examples you just use, we have preventative screening tools that we can use to detect all of those cancers at an early stage, yet they're not widely adopted. However, as I mentioned back in 2017, 2018, I was looking into that, and those technologies were already there. There are clinics opening in Australia now that got started in the U.S. that will do preventative screening. Pronovo, another great example. They've got 2 clinics that are opening here in Australia. There's other companies in Australia like Everlab that are doing this preventative screening. We have national cancer screening programs in Australia. The Breast Cancer Research Foundation is pushing blood tests for breast cancer now as a part of their work. These tools are coming. And what we need to do is build a strategy. That's the second part of the framework, in order to know which of these technologies we want to leverage and build them into our lives. So you can buy your own colon cancer screening test and do that in your 30s, even if you're not getting one shipped to you. And it costs you about $35 here in Australia. It costs you $10 in the US.
You don't have to be rich to go on the preventative health campaign yourself. Because people would think that at home. Then people's like, oh my God, if you hear the story, we had Nick Bell on, and he spent $700,000 to go and do gene therapy work over in Mexico. And so the viewers are like, oh, I need to be worth a fortune to go and start playing in this space, but it's not true.
No, it's not. And in fact, you can do that for $25,000 now. So that even the price point on that is coming down, even on the more advanced technologies. And that is happening across the board. And that's a sign of the market. People are willing to pay for this. There's many different businesses that you can go to in the US that are now looking at Australia and that are available in Europe and parts of Asia that are doing all this preventative screening for you, a holistic type of visit. There's a great company in Australia called Mole Map that you can go get an image of your whole body and map all the different lesions you have on your skin and track those over time. They've been around for a few years. And so these services are there. It's just a matter of voting with your dollar and going and doing them, managing your budget. And when you do that, you're helping to grow that market and bring all those prices down and improve the knowledge that these services are available, which grows the whole thing. And it's just getting started. I mean, this is an industry that will be worth hundreds of billions of dollars globally by the end of this decade alone. And it hardly existed at the start of the decade. And I do think COVID was a catalyst for that.
Yeah.
Let's just play a little game. So Malcolm's,
I love games.
oh, that sort of game.
All right.
So Malcolm's 48. He's an average Australian. He was a bus driver, a lot of sedentary work, sitting down a lot. Loved his footy. He went to the cricket, drank 10 beers a week.
Where's he live?
He lives in Melbourne, in Moorabbin. Malcolm's from Moorabbin.
Heard of Moorabbin? Yep.
So, but he has had a friend who's encountered a life-threatening illness, and he's been shocked into action. He's come to you for help. Let's go. What happens?
Yeah, great. So Malcolm, I've got a free longevity mindset course. I want you to go review some of that material. Let's have a chat about it. Let's talk about the fact that you don't have to get sick as you get older if you do the right lifestyle choices. Let's teach you about epigenetics. I mean, the study of epigenetics over the last 5 years has completely upended all of our ideas about aging, because we can not only measure how fast people are aging, we can even tell them which of their organs are older than others and at higher risk for disease. And epigenetics is showing us that even if you think you have, quote, bad genes, if you adopt the right lifestyle, you can live 5 to 10 years healthfully for longer. So Malcolm, it's not too late for you. There's this pathway forward where if you adopt the right lifestyle changes, that you can add these healthy years to your life. And Malcolm, at 48, I hope and I think that you might have some grandchildren on the way in your future, and you can be here for them, you can be healthy for them, and you can see them grow up. You don't have to be gone. You don't have to be doing that from a sick place. And also, Malcolm, it's 2025. And I can get you on any number of platforms that can help you optimize your health, gamify it, give you some peers to compete with. What's your favorite thing you used to do when you were younger? What sport did you do that you're not doing anymore? And what activity gets you up and going that used to give you joy that you've forgotten about? Let's get you back into that. Let's find you a club nearby of other men around the same age as you who like to do that activity with you so you can get some of that joy back in your life, because that's what's going to keep you adhering to that. And it's going to make you want to eat better when you start moving more. It's going to make you sleep better when you start moving more. And that's really the entry point for you. And yeah, okay, you got a sore knee. Well, I got at least 4 different technologies I could tell you about for your sore knee. Let's put some red light therapy on that. Let's get you moving again. What about that physiotherapist you haven't seen in 5 years? Why don't you go back for a visit and say, look, I need to get my leg strength up because I know that's going to help me move more and get moving again and get that joy back in my life. And Malcolm, you've just changed your life if you do even just half of what I've just said, and you're going to feel so much better when you do it. And that's going to light you up, and you're going to say, you know what? Nick was right. Carl and Guy, they were right.
You're not Mal, are you? You're not Mal. Is that like you're trying to get a private session with Dr. Nick? No.
So let's just say Malcolm, thank you, that's very good advice too. I'm sure Malcolm's very grateful who our one now.
Yeah.
Malcolm also has a friend that's referred him into Melbourne Functional Medicine, which is our partner in Melbourne for epigenetics testing. How does he work with them and with you?
Yeah, can you tell me a bit more about that type of epigenetic testing that they do?
We're on that path ourselves at the moment. There's a variety of different tests that we've done. We've gone in person for the anecdotal.
Across the whole body, everything from strength, balance, BMI, brain function, and then bloods go off to laboratory to go and get tested. You've got to go on somewhat of a lean diet with certain foods you can't take to
Basically everything.
Yeah.
So there's all different in-depth tests. One is a blood prick with your finger on that little mat, and that came back with telomeres and a variety of information there. That telomeres is controversial, I understand, at this point in terms of its indication for longer life. But the second more detailed testing is many, many vials of blood after essentially fasting for 4 days, yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, so what I hear there probably is the epigenetic sample is the finger prick.
Yeah.
And then the other part is the blood panel. True age. All right, so True Age is from a company called True Diagnostic. They are in Lexington, Kentucky, founded by Ryan and his partner Hannah. And I actually visited there last July, and I went through their clinic, and they use these amazing sequencing machines from Illumina, and they can pull apart your epigenetics, and they can run this through algorithms that tell you not just your biological age, but how fast you're aging, your pace of aging. They can also now tell you the functional health or biological health of at least 10 to 12 different organ systems. And they have this new technology called epigenetic biomarker proxies, where they can tell you over 100 different blood markers, your approximate average 6-month running level of those. So you've got a lot of information coming back to you. You complement that with the blood testing you just mentioned, and you're going to walk away with some key action points.
So we did the first part of that, and we're about to get our heads around going on a tight diet for 4 days to go and do the bloods for the second part. So we've done that.
Have you got yours back?
Yes.
Did you enjoy the results?
Well, it was all right, other than my body, the inflammation levels in my body weren't bad, but they were higher than perfect, which is apparently pretty common. And I've been given a protocol of supplements and some eating, ideas to sort of lower that.
Great.
So that came back. Everything else was in my body, as far as the organs and the like, were above average for my age. But I didn't like the fact that I had inflammation that is obviously one of the precursors to the aging process. And I obviously want to do something about it.
Yeah, and you are, right? So
yes.
What are you going to do after you work out that protocol and implement it over 6 months or so?
I'll go back and test it.
You're going to go back and test it again. And that is biohacking right there.
Yeah.
We've measured something. We've changed a protocol change. You could change one thing. You could change a dozen things.
Yeah.
You're going to go back and you're going to measure again. And if you see that improvement, what are you going to do after that?
I'm going to get excited, be motivated, and keep improving.
That's right. So you just use that test exactly the right way.
Layer on layer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the wrong way to use a biological age test is to do it once, get a result, and not do it again. And you got to use 2 at least, and you got to change something, and you got to learn, did that work for me? I've done that over and over and over again, and that's what I show my audience how to do through what I call self-experimentation.
80 years of age, sitting in front of us. It's incredible how good you look. It's like he's a good-looking man, isn't he, fellas? I love you.
Well, thank you, Guy.
So where there's a problem, I reckon, is that people don't go and do that. They go and do these health age calculating things that, gives you a bit of a marker, with a few questions answered. And it doesn't go in depth, and they say, oh, you might be 5 years better off than you are from your birth age, and they think that that's all good. You're not looking under the hood enough, are you?
No, I think there's a lot, again, marketing, right? We get told, get your biological age, find your true biological age. When that marketing all started getting going in 2022, I bought over 10 different tests and did them all, and you know what I got? 10 different answers. More than 20 years spread in biological age. Yeah, right. More than 20 years.
Just for those home viewers out there.
I flew something's not 80. No, not 80, not quite yet. Look forward to when I am. I'm going to be sprinting at the Penn Relays. That's an event for the 80-plus-year-old.
Really?
Yep, going to do that.
Right.
Yep. And so if you get the right test, you can get good insight, and you have to be able to repeat it again.
Which is what Karl and I are on the program doing.
So that's exactly right.
These tests are great. But to your point, before that, I'd done many tests to work out my biological age, and what I found was they were actually quite consistent, that I was between 37 and 38 years old when I'm 15 years older than that. But when we did the actual test, that was not the result. And so I'm much more biologically aligned to my chronological age than indicated. So I think it's really important that we take that step into reality as opposed to the marketing hype.
Yeah, the marketing hype's going to get you. And that's why I've done a lot of the vetting for you. I mean, I've gone all the way to the laboratory in Lexington, Kentucky, talk to them and see how it works.
It's real.
Absolutely. Looked at the research papers. They've got research partnerships with Ivy League universities that they've been building for years, and they've jumped 2 to 3 years ahead of the competition, and they're steaming forward even further into this entire world of epigenetic analytics, which is going to be a game changer. It's already starting to be. And what we don't quite understand yet is how to interpret all of that information into personalized recommendations. It's going to take fusion with AI to do that, but that's well underway. You look at 800,000 different methylation markers in the epigenetic tests. And there's a lot going on there.
It's hard to even fathom that, how they can do that.
Absolutely. It is. They put it onto a little slide sample thing that has all these, what they call probes on there. And I have one of the ones at home, the first version of it, that could do several 100,000 samples. And now I think it's tripled the amount they can do on this tiny little sliver here. And each of them's at the nanoscale, looking for a match to the exact, effectively epigenetic marker shape in your DNA. And it's amazing technology. And as it fuses with AI, you bring in your blood test, your lifestyle behaviors, we really are arriving at this era of personalized medicine that we've been promised for 10 plus years. It hasn't arrived because we have this fusion with AI. It's happening now. I'm investing in companies that are doing that. And it's going to be the final N of one horizon for us here that we're going to get to. And then we're going to be using that all the time. And we're going to know exactly the things we need to do to be improving our biological age, not just of our whole body, but for individual organs even.
It's not, the blue zones and that whole findings of where the people that were over 100 years of age, were centered around the world, per capita compared to everywhere else. It's going to become commonplace that people are still moving around and playing tennis and, going and playing golf at the age of 100 in years to come with all of this, when people are going and follow the process of what they need to do and getting on top of it, right? So
I fully agree.
That won't be too far away, would it?
No. I think, there's people alive today that will live well past 122, which is the current record for humans. So I'm very confident of that.
Live well into their hundreds.
They had to live well, not just smoking cigarettes and drinking wine like the record holder was, beautiful French woman. But when we look at the blue zones, it's one of those things that draws awareness out. We've had Dan Buettner's work for, I think he's done that about almost 20 years ago now.
And I lived in Okinawa for a month, a bit longer than a month, in the late 80s, when the place had not been touched by Western civilization at all. And there was no such thing as the thing blue zone being termed then and there. But I couldn't find any fast food on the island. I couldn't get any processed food. All the old people were up in the fields working. You could see it every day when you were doing things over there. So it's by no chance that you could tell that these people were going to live well, because, mate, it was like me being on a health camp in my 20s, living in Okinawa and just eating greens and fruit and fish every day.
Yeah, I spent 3 weeks in Costa Rica shooting a docuseries, Reversed, the Race for Longevity, at the start of 2024, and I was the host of the show, and I really tuned into this blue zone concept while I was there and paid attention to what's going on. And one of the biggest things I would say about Costa Rica is that the entire culture values the environment and the purity of the environment. They go around to each other saying "Pura Vida" as a greeting, as a way to celebrate something, as a way of saying goodbye, and it means the pure life. And they've really taken care of their environment. And these blue zones are great conversation starters. They get people thinking about this. There's some debate on the statistics around what's a blue zone, what's not.
Well, that doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't.
If you go there, you can tell that it's the real deal.
It is the real deal. And it's not about the purple sweet potatoes either. What it is, I believe, when you look at it, is that these people have a longevity mindset.
Yeah.
They don't think, I'm going to get old and useless and I'm no longer going to be relevant to my family or my society. They're integrated with their society. They're in traditional family units. They wake up, they have purpose, they have motivation.
There's a job to do.
Walking up hills. They are bought into their life. They have a reason to get up each day. And I think that goes back.
So you said earlier, you talked about mindset. So in Australia here, we just think, when you're 80 years of age, you get parked into a home and that's it, right? And it's just the whole structure of how it works here is completely different to what you're talking about.
It is.
Because great-grandmother at 92 Mate, she's heading out in the morning after having breakfast and going out and doing stuff for the family unit because that's the job to be done.
Absolutely. That's
And she'll
purpose
come
right
back
there.
at night and she's part of it, and she's gone and done an honest day's activity as part of the whole family unit.
Have you ever done an honest day's work?
Well, depends how you define.
Are you doing any form of work right now? No, I don't think either. So Nick, for someone who actually has dedicated their life to something useful, where do people start? Like, what's the best place to start for the average person, Malcolm or otherwise?
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I'll be a bit selfish with this answer and say that this is why I've created a free longevity mindset course. And if you got it, it's only a few hours of total work in there. I have 4 chapters, a few different lessons in each one. We focus on that background story, why you should care about what I have to say. We look at the elements of mindset, and in particular, growth mindset, which is a concept coined by Carol Dweck, research professor in 2008. She started talking about this. And this idea is that you can change the outcomes of any given situation by learning new things, gaining more knowledge and skills, that you are not simply stuck where you are, but that anyone you see who's successful, like Guy, has actually done a lot of hard work in his life to be where he is. I'm just defending you a bit, Guy. Charles Gibbs is really...
Honestly, you're my favourite guest that I've had on the show.
I was doing that on purpose, Guy. I want to get on your new Younger, Longer platform. Yeah, so if we look at this growth mindset, the real point there is that you can change your circumstance, you can learn new things, you can improve yourself, and that is the central nugget to a longevity mindset, except we're applying it to our health. And
so let's go into that. Like, that's the process. Do they go and book in with you and do an online session? Is it just online?
Just online, just free. You don't even have to talk to me, although you're very welcome to send me your feedback. I'm not doing coaching programs.
That's a free service.
This is free, absolutely free.
So for someone doing that, how long would that normally take, that part of the 4 parts?
If they sat down and did the whole thing, it would take them an hour and a half.
Okay.
If they do the homework diligently, which I'll tell you about, which is cool, it might take them another half an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not talking about a lot of time here. And when we understand that we don't have to have a fixed mindset about our health, where we're going to get old and sick and weak and tired and irrelevant to society, but in fact, we can adopt a growth-oriented longevity mindset, we can start to get excited. Maybe we can talk about those two key realizations I mentioned earlier, which is aging does not have to result in disease. Disease is not destiny. And the longer you hear, the more technology is here to help.
Part 2 then. So we've changed our mind. We're feeling good. We're motivated. We get it. What's the next stage?
Yeah, well, I would say really when I say the word realization, the biggest, most important stage is to actually have that change your view of reality. So that's what I'm trying to do with those 2 key realizations. That's chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the course, and that's the end. Because if I can get you to realize that you actually have agency over your health future, and this is why, because of everything we began to understand with epigenetics, you can change all these things in your lifestyle and stay healthy, and that's already come down significantly. And that will become something that you can do for maybe $5,000 instead of $25,000.
It'll be $1,000 eventually or less.
It'll be. It'll have to go through regulatory approval, and we're always going to have this bleeding edge where there's exciting things out there that only Nick Bell's trying. But we will have a lot more resources than we could possibly even imagine when we look 5 to 10 years ahead, if not further, which I think all of us here are going to live through that period of time, as well as the listeners, because that's going to be tremendously exciting. But again, we have to have some sort of strategy to navigate that, which is where we go after we get through this free mindset.
So when you've done the course, you're on your website, what do you do? Is the next part would be that they want to go down that road. Does your website give the information of what they got to do next? So it's laid out for them.
That's right. Progressive. Go into strategy. I give people a free health history question.
And you come into it like, what part do we get Dr. Nick outside of the online side? Is there a journey with that as well?
Not yet. I've got some ideas about that.
Okay.
So I've got some ideas about some things I can do with that. But really, as, again, bringing in that tech entrepreneur mindset, I'm always thinking about scale. I'm thinking about impact. I'm thinking about achieving an impact over tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. How do we do that? We have great collaborations like the one we're talking about here. We make it easy. We make it exciting. And, the thing you're on, what's next, guy? What's next? That's simple. I give people a PDF. They should complete a health history, figure out what genetic risks they have in their family for free. Complement that with a great test kit, genetic test kit. I partner with Self-Decode. They've got a great health report, health risk assessment tool that comes out of genetic testing, and you can pinpoint those things that you're most at risk for, see where it overlaps with your family health history. That's where you start. That's where you're going to reap the most reward, so that you can walk down the giant supplement aisle at Chemist Warehouse or the supermarket or anywhere else, and you can have a starting point. You can know, I'm going to pick that eye health supplement up off the shelf. That's where I'm going to start. What might it be for somebody else? Well, is it type 2 diabetes in your family?
Could be gut health.
Blood sugar regulation. Is it Crohn's disease or another genetic disease of the gut, like you're just mentioning gut? I need to focus on gut health. That's where I reap the most reward. It simplifies it. It makes it practical and straightforward. That's where you start. It makes it easy to actually get started. And then, of course, after you've done the basics, feel free to get excited. Go get your biological age tested from True Diagnostic. Yeah. Start getting some supplements in there that can make your biological age improve.
Do some more exercise. Eat a bit better.
Take your exercise to the next level. Yeah, like I'm doing triathlons.
Cut back on the alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you're going to start feeling better. You're going to start looking better. Your friends are going to take notice of that. You're going to join a social club where you're doing that activity that you love. And your life is going to start to feel like something you want to keep being a part of.
Yeah, we'll get you into a social club soon.
Actually, Nick mentioned triathlon. Did you ever win a triathlon?
Get you integrated with him. How these?
Nick's, thanks so much for joining us. That's incredibly informative.
Yeah, Karl, that was a fantastic discussion.
We'll put your website up on the notes for everyone to go and check out.
Yeah, thank you for that, guy.
You've been a bundle of information.
Yeah, it's okay that you didn't get on the top of the podium, mate. I haven't either.